Last year in doctrine, I think we went over this, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I just want to refresh their memories. And if you have your notes from doctrine class last year, you might want to pull them out. Because I want you to be responsible for this, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it right now. But, and I think we actually touched on this earlier this year in connection with Aristotle, but when Luther said justification is by faith alone, we spent a little time dealing with the sense in which the word by is used. Remember that? And in that connection, we analyzed it using Aristotle's four causes. Does that ring a bell? A little bit? Should. And the four causes that Aristotle delineates are? Sydney, can you give me any or all of the four causes?
I think it's formal.
Formal.
And then material.
Material.
Instrumental.
Instrumental is not one of Aristotle's, but it does figure in later. So we got two of them. Ben, can you supplement the list? Formal, material. What are the other two causes from Aristotle?
Well, there's the designer. I don't know what his word for that was.
Okay. Anybody remember his words? We got two. Laura? Final cause is one of them. And which one is left? Go ahead. Efficient. So, those are the four causes. That should ring a bell. And now, applying these to Aristotle's description of producing a sculpture, remember that? What are each of these? Did you do this? Trevor, can you run through the formal, material, final, efficient? What do they correlate to in terms of sculpting? A marble statue, the formal cause would be what?
Formal cause. That's the plan.
The plan. Material cause is? Marble. Final cause is?
The end result, like the actual statue.
No. No. Final cause is? Anybody remember this? Final cause is? The reason why? The motive? Maybe money, maybe whatever. The efficient cause is what? What's the efficient cause? Anybody? Megan?
Those are the tools being used.
No, it's the actual sculptor. Then the tools figure in as what the Reformers call the instrumental cause. That all coming back to you? I don't want to labor all this because it should be, shouldn't be buried between too many layers of extraneous memories in your brains. So, in connection with how we are justified by faith, that is, in what sense is faith a cause of justification? The Reformers would say that all of these causes apply. You with me? So, for example, Joe, if we apply this not to sculpturing now, but we apply it to justifying a wicked sinner and turning that person into a justified saint, what are the, what do each of these correlate to? The formal cause would be?
The formal cause would be, official cause would be God.
Okay, the efficient cause is God. He's the one that justifies.
Material cause. Is the formal cause, what was that again? Is that the thing that's being...
Let's see, who gave this to us a minute ago? Who was it? Oh, it was Sydney. So what is the formal cause? When you're sculpturing, what's the formal cause? The plan. So what's the formal cause if you're justifying a sinner? What's the plan? What's the blueprint?
I guess salvation and or
Sorry. Anybody? What's the formal cause?
Did you say it was to be made righteous?
Okay, to be made righteous, or the Reformers would say to be made like Christ. To be conformed, conformed to the image of Christ. That's God's design, His plan. That we are taken from a position of corruption and molded into a Christ-like human being. The material cause would be what? Right?
The sinner.
The sinner, the person you start with. Final cause, probably the best term here would be, Nicole.
For God's glory.
For God's glory. There you go. The efficient cause is God does it. And the Reformers then said that faith is actually a tool in the hands of the efficient cause. God uses faith as the instrumental cause of this transaction we call justification. Now the subtlety here, but the very important subtlety, is therefore faith is something God does, not something you do. Okay? That's the Reformers' view. We're dead. God acts toward us using these tools, but the tool is something that happens in you. Faith happens in you, but it's something God does. So that's just part of the predestinarian theology of the Reformers generally. Okay, that all kind of comes back to you. I'm not laboring that, but I just want to make sure that's, because I want you to know that. You'll be responsible for that, but we spent quite a bit more time on that last year, working through it first time around. Now I just want to kind of snap my fingers and have it all go right back in your brains. You see. So I don't have to spend so much time on it. So that's happened, right? It's all there. Good. And then we move on to faith. So we also notice that the Reformers talked about the character of faith. And this most famous little formulation here is all three Latin terms. And now, Matthew, you can tick these right off the top of your head, can you not? Three Latin terms that capture the Reformed view of faith, or the components that make up faith. And those terms are, fiducia is one. All right, well, fiducia is the last one. Very good. Who remembers the other two? Anybody? Laura? Notitia is the first one. And the other one was assensus, which I think probably, if you pronounced it correctly, would be asenkus. Asenkus, I bet. But I've always heard it assensus, so there you go. So, Kayla, what are we talking about with notitia? Basically, if you just gave an English word that kind of described what is notitia, you would use the English word what?
I think it was notary or notification.
Okay, those are all English words we get from that. That's true. The fundamental idea was, Spencer, do you remember this? Basic idea behind notitia, it's simply the...
Something about, it's the beginning process, like it's something really subtle. I don't know.
All right. It's not that subtle, but it is. Sydney?
Wasn't it just the fact?
It's the information. Notitia is just the information. You cannot have faith in the New Testament sense of the word, the Reformers insisted, unless you have certain information. And that information would be what? What information do you have to have? The Pythagorean theorem? The speed of light? What is the information you need to have? Sarah?
The knowledge of the gospel.
The gospel. And can you give me the gospel in 30 seconds or less?
That Christ was born and then grew and died for our sins so that we could be saved and save us from our sins.
All right, that's good. That's about 6 seconds, so pretty good, yeah. That's the heart of the matter. There's this man. He was God among us. He lived, he died. His death was an atoning death. He stood in the place of God's wrath for me, and as I place my faith in him, I can receive the benefits thereof. You know, that idea. That's the gospel. So there's a very particular set of propositions that are connected with faith. And then, of course, on top of knowing that information, it's essential to what? What would the assensus factor here be, Josiah? Assensus would mean?
I think it's to accept those ideas.
Accept them as, that's right.
being true.
That's right, to accept them as true, to assent. It's not enough just to know them. I have to agree to them, believe that they're true, sincerely believe it. And then what does the fiducia element add? What's going on there? Anybody? Trevor, what's the fiducia element? I know it, I believe it. What does fiducia tack on here?
That means submitting yourself to God.
Okay, that's the idea. Fiducia, as in a fiduciary, is a relationship of trust, and the precise idea is that I entrust myself to it. I make the gospel my fiduciary. I entrust myself to it in time and eternity. And implied within that is I do it with affection. I love it. So I know it, I believe it, I love it. You may recall, I think we talked about this last year, if a person, knows the gospel, believes it's true, James says, so far they're qualified to be, what? A demon, Because what the Christian brings to the table that the demon is lacking is not knowledge or conviction, but love. And that's not only true of demons, it's true of anybody that doesn't accept the gospel. The fundamental difference is that you love what they hate. The Reformers would say the first two of these come by human instruments. We preach the gospel, we persuade people of its truth. That's why you're taking apologetics. You want to know and have some competence in the discipline of being able to not only communicate the gospel, but to persuade someone of its truth. But in the final analysis, the Reformers say, this is the point where you are helpless. You cannot get them to love it. In fact, if you persuade them enough, but there's no grace in their hearts, all you're going to do is help them hate God more intelligently. You see. The better they understand it, the more they will resent it, unless God changes their hearts. And that's the sense in which, therefore, faith is an instrument in the hands of God. God has to change their hearts. Right? That all makes sense? That's the Reformers' view. That we're deep in secondary doctrine. I'm not saying you need to believe this. I'm just saying this is what the Reformers taught, and that's what we're covering right now. All right? It's a robust, predestinarian kind of theology. And I think you see why. And that brings us then to the last word. This is where we spent a little more time last year. And I will go through this again. We probably won't get through much of it today. But it's the word alone. This is where we went through all that stuff last year about forensic. Remember that? Synthetic, imputation. If you have those notes, which I hope you do, then you should retrieve them and just bring them along, and it'll save you some handwriting because it'll just be there and we can kind of go through that more rapidly. If you didn't save those notes, then shame on you, because these notes are pure gold, and will serve you for years to come. But anyway, if you can turn those notes up, then I suggest you bring them to class Monday, and we'll pick up right there with that conversation.